Hi, everybody. Welcome to this edition of 49ers Radio 49. My special guest here on this exclusive podcast, he is the 49ers insider for NBC Sports Bay Area. You see him on 49ers Live with the great Jennifer Leigh Chan and Niners insider Matt Maiocco.
Hey, Brian, how you doing?
Doing good. Long time no see. How's everything? How you enjoying your bye week?
So far so good. I got on, let's see, today's Friday. So on Thursday, I had a 20-minute sit-down interview with Brock Purdy. We covered a lot of different topics. That'll be on our next 49ers Talk podcast. And so I'm just kind of sitting down and going through that and mapping out some stories from that. So always stuff to be doing around the 49ers. And then, of course, this weekend, in particular, the Sunday games we'll be keeping a close eye on and seeing how it develops as far as who the 49ers will play in the first round of the playoffs.
Well, ironically, you did that interview. And what time 49ers Talk will air, though, for all the listeners?
I think Jennifer and I will tape our next podcast as soon as we know who the 49ers opponent is going to be.
Right.
So it could be, we might tape it, there's a 1:30 p.m. game on Sunday. And if the Packers win that, then the 49ers are definitely playing the Packers.
Next Saturday.
Yeah.
Next Saturday.
At what time is it? Then I think at 5:00 is the next game. Like if the Packers lose, if the Cowboys win, beat the Packers, then if the Rams win over the Lions on Sunday night, then we'll tape it after that. If not, we'll probably just wait until the outcome of the Monday night game to see who the 49ers will play. At that point, if the Cowboys win, if the Lions win,
and the Buccaneers or Eagles,
then the 49ers will play the winner of that game. Yeah.
And the winner of that, and if those two teams win, that both those home teams win before the Monday night game, the winner of that Eagles Buccaneers game will be coming out here to Santa Clara, to the Mecca, to play on 1 week from next Sunday.
Right. Yeah. So I think that of the scenarios, if the 49ers play the Packers or the Rams, the game will be on Saturday. If the 49ers play the Buccaneers or the Eagles, that game will be on Sunday. Did I say that right? The game will be on Saturday if they play the
Packers or the Rams.
Yeah, and then Sunday if they play the Eagles or
and one way or the other, both of any of those teams who the survivors are going to have a short week one way or the other. Wouldn't even matter.
Yeah, you're right. And I think it would matter. My perspective is the 49ers would probably like to know Sunday who they're playing. I think they would like to have the week where they play Saturday, because then that would give them a longer week. If they win, if they get past the divisional round game, that would give them a longer week to get ready for the NFC Championship. Yep.
Right. So it's been like a week since the season. And by the way, this came into the mail yesterday. Got my Purdy jersey.
There it is, Brock Purdy.
Yep, got the Brock Purdy jersey. And by the way, my favorite two quarterbacks growing up in the 80s was both, and they beat them in the Super Bowl, was Montana and Marino. So this is yeah. So I gave away my Jimmy Garoppolo jersey for Christmas at the our Christmas at Christmas holiday bash at the 49 Mile. Antonio Varlo from Arvalo Productions. That was a great event on Christmas night. I wish the outcome would have been different, but it was a great night. Love doing that during the holiday season. But now we got to get to the focus. What's been going on with the 49ers since doing their bye week? They've been getting some practice in, and what's been going on down in
I think that on Friday they're going to have the pads on, kind of a rare padded practice for this late in the season. So that's just a way for them to stay sharp. And so that's been the focus, is just practicing, staying sharp, staying focused, and also getting guys healthy. And right now I think the only guy who will not be healthy for the first game of the playoffs would be Cleveland Ferrell. Look for Chase Young to start and get a lot of playing time. But everybody else, Eric Armstead should be out there. Of course, McCaffrey, and he's fine. He not practicing this week, but he should be a full go next week. Should be, crisp and fresh legs and all of that. Yeah, I think everybody else should be ready. George Kittle and Dre Greenlaw sat out week 18 against the Rams, more for precautionary reasons.
Yeah.
A back spasm for Kittle and a little Achilles tendonitis for Greenlaw, but I think they're just resting those guys up to make sure that everybody's ready to go once the real meaningful games begin.
Yeah, and then also, Adam Peters today. Word came down as we're doing this taping, is got the gig for the Washington Commanders, a franchise who have been just maligned in recent times. The recent sale of from moving on from Daniel Snyder. I was never a big fan of him, but I think he's the right guy for that franchise to get back to where they were when doing their championship teams in the 80s, when them and the 49ers were probably the two winningest franchises in all of football back in the 80s during my youth, growing up at that time.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's going to be interesting. Adam Peters has history with the New England Patriots. Might Adam Peters try to hire Bill Belichick, or will Bill Belichick, his next job, will he kind of really place a priority on just being the all-knowing football czar, who is his own general manager? But with the relationship there, that's something that the Commanders are talking about. But, from the moment that I heard that Bob Myers, the former Warriors general manager, was coming in, to help in that search, I knew right away, it's got to be Adam Peters, because, I don't think Adam is necessarily a guy who's real comfortable being the front man, being out in front, speaking, from the podium or whatever. So it would take somebody, I think, who really knows him well and knows the background and knows the kind of job that he does and the kind of person he is. I think it would take somebody like that to hire him. And that's what, Bob Myers knows Adam Peters very well, and did not surprise me at all that was done rather quickly. It was actually done faster than I thought it'd be done, but I think that is a good hire, and it's a good spot, I think, for Adam to go to a place that is starving for a winner, starting for just an organization that runs properly. So it's a good spot. I mean, you really nowhere to go but up for that franchise.
Oh, man.
I think it is a good spot for Peters.
Yeah, I mean, me, 80s and 90s generation myself, remember when the Redskins in their heyday were winning Super Bowls, and them and the Niners right in that mix, along with the Giants and the Bears. And then after, when Gibbs' first retirement, then when the Cook family sold that team, it's just been like a revolving door. They made it to the playoffs a few times, and Gibbs did come back, but it just wasn't the same franchise like they were during their days at RFK Stadium, and the battles they had with the 49ers, and the similar style of sophisticated offense what Joe Gibbs and Bill Walsh had. And of course, Joe Gibbs was, once upon a time, people forget, was an assistant offensive coordinator with the late Eric Coryell in San Diego. And that explosive offense, he brought that same system to the nation's capital.
Yeah. So good opportunity there, and I think with so many coaching changes and so many teams going through transitions, this is going to be a fascinating offseason. It's already been a fascinating offseason.
Pete Carroll's parting with the Seahawks, and this is kind of, we're seeing, Matt. This is considering the changing of the guard of coaching.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
With Nick Saban, another protege with Bill Belichick when he was the head coach with the Cleveland Browns back in the early 90s. They got them back towards respectability. Unfortunately, when Art Modell pulled the plug on the city of Cleveland and moved that franchise to the to Baltimore, which that was like my AFC team growing up with Bernie Kosar and Kevin McInerney Biner back in the day when they're not playing the 49ers. And my old teacher was a big Browns fan, and I liked like that old stadium, Cleveland Municipal Stadium on the lakefront. It's a reflection of their passionate fan base there in northern Ohio. And then they brought the new Browns back, and they're doing good. Uh, Belichick, if they hadn't left Cleveland, the original Browns, I think they probably would have did something. Probably got to a Super Bowl.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think Bill Belichick learned a lot, in his first go round as an NFL head coach, and I don't know the last time
Bill Parcells' protege.
Yeah, I don't know the last time the Cleveland Browns have had, even a Pro Bowl quarterback. And so, it makes life a lot easier when you have a guy like Tom Brady that you're sending out there every Sunday. Makes it a lot easier to be a head coach. But, that pairing, we always think back to Bill Walsh and Joe Montana. Just what a perfect pairing that was. And
Chuck Noll and Terry Bradshaw, and then Bill Cowher and Ben Roethlisberger. You can even throw in Mike Tomlin. And you did an interview, a podcast with both, I believe, with Patriots owner Bob Kraft several years ago.
Yeah,
and
I did.
Talked about told him about the time he met Eddie DeBartolo. This was about the mid-'90s when the Niners were going to win their 5th Super Bowl.
Yeah.
The Patriot franchise was going through a transition or transformation with Bill Belichick and Drew Bledsoe. And I always say it, Matt, if it wasn't for it really was for Parcells and Bledsoe really connect that bridge gap to those two, to Brady and Belichick and Brady.
Yeah, when Bob Kraft and the Kraft family took over the Patriots, obviously they were new to the NFL game, and they reached out to Carmen Policy and Eddie DeBartolo and spent a lot of time with the 49ers, just kind of getting a peek behind the curtain of, what the top franchise in the league, what they do, how they do it, how they treat people, how they create the structure for the organization. And so in those early days, the Kraft family leaned a lot on the 49ers to kind of learn the proper way of doing it. And so I know, when I talked to Bob Kraft a few years back, that was when Eddie DeBartolo was going into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. He talked about that, the 49ers willingness to kind of open their doors and help another franchise kind of find its way.
Yeah, I say similar thing. I took that as a fan, as a broadcaster, and doing my times at University of San Francisco baseball, covering those teams and doing play-by-play for so many years. I took kind of all those elements, and I take that and apply that to where I run into walks of life. Similar thing. Very powerful. How I have to go through a few peaks and valleys to go through their behind the scene windows. So, it was a great thing that, because at that time when when you did that podcast, I can still find that podcast somewhere, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. You could probably just Google 49ers Talk podcast and Bob Kraft or Eddie DeBartolo, and I'm sure it'll pop up.
I mean, that franchise, I look back in perspective when I was a kid in the mid-'80s, when I started following football around 85, January of 85, I was 8 when they beat the Dolphins, and they beat them at Stanford Stadium. The following year, my first full year following the Niners, I had one of my class teachers named Marge. She just passed away recently, I think over a year ago. I'm going to probably, try to write to her daughter. And she, from Boston, taught out here in the Bay Area. Big Patriot fan. They got to the Super Bowl in January of '86. She said that the Patriots knocked off the Bears, she was going to get a big cake for all of the students because she loved the Patriots, the Red Sox, and the Celtics. And I never forget from the old stomping grounds. But the Patriots, after that run they had with Tony Eason and Steve Grogan and Stanley Morgan and that group, and Andre Tippett, they went through some lean years. They had some problems. The whole sexual harassment incident with Lisa Olson, the Boston reporter. Then Bob Kraft got the hold of that franchise, or actually Bill Parcells took over. But then Bob Kraft came in there, and Parcells took up to the Super Bowl. A slew of those players on that '96 AFC Championship team was part of that dynasty.
Yeah. So
and I always, the Patriots, you could say, well, Spygate or anything or whatever, but I always tell the younger crowd, when I was like doing my teenage years, I always tell them, you always got to thank Bill Parcells and Drew Bledsoe for laying that bridge gap between those two, between that dynasty. Because when the Patriots started winning those Super Bowls, the Niners was in those with Erickson and with Nolan and Singletary. You covered those bad teams. What would, in perspective, where the Niners are then and where they are now? You guys share me some of those memories. They were not the best of times in the mid 2000s being a 49er fan.
No, it was a poorly run football organization, as far as just the people in the organization being on the same page, head coach, general manager. Heck, even when they were good, with Jim Harbaugh and Trent Baalke, there was never that cohesion between coach and
cohesive unit.
Yeah, and the thing that, going back to Pete Carroll, the thing that Jed York wanted to accomplish with the 49ers was to have a coach and a GM who were in lockstep, like John Schneider and Pete Carroll up in Seattle.
Correct. That's correct.
And so what he did was he basically, hired Kyle Shanahan and kind of gave Shanahan carte blanche to find his general manager. And it just kind of worked out that way where Shanahan and John Lynch had been talking. John Lynch, of course, was in the broadcast booth and called that divisional round game, I believe it was. Or was it the NFC Championship game? I forget. I think it was a divisional round game, the Falcons and the Seahawks. And they talked before the game. They talked after the game. And Shanahan was kind of, the light bulb went on above his head and was like, you know what, John Lynch, he sounds like he could be a good general manager. And so he called him.
Talks like it that way too.
Yeah.
And you also have to look at it in a perspective, where your thoughts when John York you were covering the Niners when John York, when he fired Steve Mariucci, things got real ugly. And even before he fired Mooch, there was rumblings in the buildings. There was some stuff going on, and I've heard, listened to that piece by Lowell Cohen, Grant Cohen's father, that Bill Walsh never liked, at the beginning, never liked John York, the way how he, there was some, it was pretty bad at the beginning before things got real.
Well, things got good. Like I said, I mean, things really didn't only got good just as far as the total structure of the organization when John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan came in. And even when I think they started that 2017 season 0-8. And so on the field, things weren't good, but in the locker room, things were getting better. And it's structure wise and with the team. Right. I mean, Brian, I was with, I've been around this where, I would be talking to the coach and he would be, ripping the general manager to me. And then I'd go around the corner and talk to the general manager and he'd be ripping the coach.
Trent Baalke, right?
Well, no, I'm not going to say who.
No, you don't have to know. I'm not going to get you in trouble.
But it would be, it was always people were trying to cover their butts, right?
Messy.
Point fingers at other people.
Mess.
And even when the 49ers, were 0-8, and coming off the one and done, Jim Tomsula, one and done, Chip Kelly, I never have heard anything bad. Like John Lynch has never said anything bad about Kyle Shanahan.
Never.
About the worst he could say is he kind of pokes fun a little bit at how wound up Kyle gets sometimes, and how, how John has to kind of be the voice of reason and kind of talk him down a little bit. And I certainly haven't ever heard anything bad from Kyle Shanahan about John Lynch. So I remember there was somebody who wrote something a couple years back. Actually, I think it was the spring of 2019 where Lynch and Shanahan aren't seeing eye to eye and could be out. And I remember, Kyle either texting me or I called him or whatever, and he was adamant. He's like, Matt, that is not the case at all. Like we're our bond is as strong as it's ever been. And it's funny because that particular season was when the franchise really turned the corner. It was only a year, they'd only been together for 2 years at that point. And then, that third season, they go to the Super Bowl. And
Yeah.
other than the COVID year of 2020, they've been a top 4 team in the NFL for the past 5 years. So now their goal is, quite simple. It's to
Gotta bring it home.
It's to win 3 more games in
And
the postseason, and
they've earned that bye, and now it's time to cash that check. And in perspective of that 2014 season, when right before Harbaugh, people forget the Niners were 7-4 after they beat the Giants, and right before they played the Seahawks on that Thanksgiving night 9 years ago. And you were there.
Oh yeah,
and I mean, I was there. I always say that was
on the field game
at Levi's, and then you had Jed York blowing up a tweet saying that performance was not okay.
Yeah.
And that's when the whole firestorm began, and it just did not. And then you had players getting in trouble.
Yeah, and I would say, Brian, even before that, there
Right.
were some cracks in the foundation. There were a lot of cracks in the foundation, just kind of the behind the scenes stuff. But that's probably when it really became something that filtered into the locker room.
Yep.
You had, the general manager, or the general manager under fire, the head coach under fire, the offensive coordinator under fire. It became quite apparent really quickly that this just wasn't going to work out. That that it wasn't a long-term solution. Harbaugh and Balky.
Yeah, I remember it's funny because they were 7-4, and then after that game, because they ended up losing to the Seahawks on Thanksgiving night.
Yeah.
Then they end up losing to the Raiders after the mini bye.
Yeah.
Then they end up losing to the Seahawks again.
The Raiders game was the one that really kind of sealed their fate, I think.
Yeah, and I was out there at the Coliseum taping my tailgate show, because that's when you can go to BART, and I was a BART commute from the city, and that's when things really got ugly. And then they lose that game, but they lose to Seattle to pretty much eliminate. So you knew rumors were Harbaugh was out of there after this year.
Yeah,
and then from that loss on Thanksgiving night till about week 9, they end up losing, I think, 37 or 38 out of their next 45 games.
Yeah,
you include from when Harbaugh left, to Tom Sula, to Kelly, to the it was tough. But then things started to turn around. They got the 6-10. Then Jimmy blows out his knee against Kansas City. A step back, the Super Bowl, COVID year, couldn't do nothing. It was like a silent movie and a silent movie and a B movie. Then came within close of getting to the Super Bowl twice. Last year, Purdy gets damaged his elbow, so it was kind of almost that game against Philly was a TKO. Which, by the way, we're with those two teams since that game a month ago, and you were there in Philadelphia when the Niners beat the Eagles, and when big boy for the Eagles, Dom, looked like the Pillsbury Doughboy, comes out and poked with Dre Greenlaw. That has totally altered the course of their season.
Yeah, isn't it amazing? I think the 49ers just went in there and kind of ripped their hearts out in a lot of ways. There was all the talk leading into that game. There was all the talk coming out of that game. And it just kind of felt like the Eagles' spirit was just crushed in that game. And you mentioned this. So they went into that game 10-1.
Yep.
And now they'll open the playoffs after finishing the regular season 11-6. Is that right? 11-6.
5 of their last 6 games.
5 of their last 6 games.
And they were
lost.
They were 2 games up on the Niners for that number 1
seed. They were.
And now they end up finishing 11-6. So that That's about a 3 or 4 game swing within
Yeah.
within a month. They
Yeah.
went from possibly the number one at very worst at number two, to now at 5, and Tampa Bay could go in there and beat them at home.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean,
Absolutely.
and I was listening to some of their podcasts, the Dan Cilio, and then the people in Philadelphia, our good friend from NBC Philadelphia, one of your compadres back there, I think Ruben Frank. They are just like, and a Mr. Philly media writer legend Ray Dinger, or
Yeah.
the other people, including former Eagle All-Pro Seth Joyner, uh, they are just saying this team is they're lost. It's
Yeah.
just
Yeah. It's going to be interesting. Brian, there's always some surprise coaching moves.
yeah.
And not that, Pete Carroll, there might be more after that, if, and I'm keeping a little bit of an eye on Nick Sirianni, if,
Oh,
it's crazy
yeah.
to think of, but the way that they have just kind of lost their way, if they were to go into Tampa and lose and look bad losing that first playoff game,
Oh, yeah.
I'm not sure Sirianni is safe. And also around the league, I think if the Packers beat the Cowboys, I think Mike McCarthy
He's on the
is
hot
is
seat.
certainly not safe. So
Well, yeah, and you also got to look at for Sirianni in perspective. Back in 1994, when the Niners lost to the Eagles 40-8, and at that halfway mark later on, the Eagles were 7-2. That they were right there battling with Dallas for first place in the NFC East, which that lead wasn't going to hold that long. They went into the tank, lost their last 7 games, while the Niners won 10 in a row,
yeah,
and they wouldn't lose again until that Monday night. I think the night after Christmas, uh, the Eagles went 7-9. The Niners went all the way to the Super Bowl, and then they fired Rich Kotite, and then Ray Rhodes, defensive coordinator, takes over in Philadelphia. And of course, he brings Ricky Waters with him.
mhm,
And
yeah,
that's just in perspective. If they were to lose this game, and then Tampa's got a pretty good defense, not the defense when they won a couple of years ago or when they had with John Lynch and Warren Sapp, but if the Eagles lose this game Monday night, I will not be surprised. If there's no way Sirianni survives this. And now looking back, I think it was a big mistake that them getting rid of Doug Peterson after he won that Super Bowl. I think it was a bad, even though they got there last year, but I think now people looking at that was a big mistake.
yeah. I mean, teams. I think coaches are more disposable than they've ever been. Teams make decisions. Teams are the Steelers are the anomaly. The Steelers are the unicorn in the
Only
NFL as
two,
far
yep.
as
I'm not a
just
Steeler fan, but I
they
respect the Rooney
they get
family.
they get
3,
people they like. They get people who, they're patient. They give them room to operate, and those coaches are not looking over their shoulders.
right?
So they're the one. They're the only organization like that.
Only
Uh,
3 different, I think 2 or 3 different head coaches since 1969. Chuck
yeah, well,
Noll,
but yeah,
Bill Cowher,
yeah.
and Mike Tomlin. I hope Tomlin stays there in the Steel City.
I think he will. I mean, I just don't see, especially this year, the way the the Steelers started out and the way they finished, making it to the playoffs. There, watching them week one, and seeing them early in the season, I was like, well, that's certainly not a playoff team.
Not even close. And a
And
lot
not
of
even
our
close.
people at the tailgate out there in Pittsburgh and Santa Clara made that trek out there to the Steel City. You could see some photos, and it's always fun when the Niners play the Pittsburgh Steelers, though, because of the 2 dynasties. Once upon a time, they were the gold standard. A. DeBarlo took that blueprint from the Rooney family. Then it was, the Niners win the 4 of the 5 Super Bowls, 3 of those 4 with Bill Walsh. Then it was Jerry Jones and Jimmy Johnson taking that blueprint from A. DeBarlo. The Cowboys were the gold standard, winning 3 out of 4. And then the Niners in between, Bill or Bob Kraft came in there, took that blueprint from A. DeBarlo. They went to the playoffs a few times with Bledsoe and Parcells. Parcells left. Pete Carroll took over. Then it was Belichick. The dynasty begins with the Patriots. And that was and with Adam Peters working for that Patriot franchise, he's kind of going to take some of that Niner blueprint to the nation's capital.
Yep, no doubt about it. Hey, Brian, I do have to run here fairly soon, but if there's anything else, what other topics would you like to hit as it pertains to the current 49ers and where this team is?
Well, I'm going to say one thing about the AFC playoffs. I've been telling a lot of people that Baltimore with the best record and Lamar Jackson, who is 1-3 in playoffs. And I'm just not sold on the Ravens yet, or not sold on them. If they do represent the AFC, they deserve it. But I think one team, I picked them at the beginning of the year, was going to represent the AFC in the Super Bowl. I think they could knock them out. Maybe two. I say Buffalo's going to come out of there as the AFC champs. Yeah. Niners, Bills, Chris Berman, Super Bowl. I've been waiting for that since I was a teenager.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think the Bills come in, behind the Ravens as a hot team to watch in the AFC. As long as the Chiefs have Patrick Mahomes, they're going to be a really tough out. And I know it's supposed to be frigid conditions.
The consequences for the Miami Dolphins not taking care of business on last Sunday night in the Peacock in warm, humid weather.
Yeah.
You a trip to Kansas City. And them poor Dolphin fans, I feel sorry for them. They go to that nice tropical weather, and they now been sentenced to Siberia.
Yeah, no, that's
it was like what,
crazy.
75, 80 degrees. It's almost like a minus. I can't calculate right, about a minus at least 40, negative 40 differential.
Yeah. I think isn't it supposed to be like almost like a negative 20 wind chill?
Yeah, it's something. Well, the 81 AFC championship between Cincinnati and San Diego was like minus 59.
Wow. Yeah.
And it's like, it's cold in the Bay Area. I've never been in cold weather like that. I can't imagine. You got to stock up, go to Target, look socks and thermo.
You know what? I heard Alex Smith on the NFL, Sirius NFL radio on Wednesday. I was driving to work, and they had Matt Castle on to talk about Bill Belichick, and Alex said that the first time he walked into the equipment room in Kansas City, Castle had already departed the organization, and the equipment people there said, "Hey, Castle left these behind. Do you want them?" There is actual wetsuits, a wetsuit, wow. And so Alex,
for surfing. Wow.
Like for surfing, and so Alex didn't know what to make of it, and later that season, they were outside practicing in frigid conditions, and Alex put on the wetsuit and was like, "Oh my gosh, this actually works." And apparently the Chiefs equipment room now has like 30 wetsuits that players will wear. And he said, not only does it keep you warm, from your complete body warm, but also when you get tackled on that hard as a rock frozen surface, it's another layer of protection. So I don't know if the Miami Dolphins were listening to Alex Smith and Matt Castle talk about that, but it sounds to me like a lot of Kansas City Chiefs will be wearing wetsuits under their uniform.
I will say this, though. I think I will put that as a reference if I ever want to cover the Niners like they will play Buffalo next year.
They will. They will. And Green Bay. And Green Bay.
Oh, yeah. And a lot of our guys from the Faithful Boulevard will be making those trips to Appleton and going up to Orchard Park, New York. And I definitely want to check out Buffalo and South Florida. And they do go to Minnesota. But I will use that as a reference, that body suit. I will probably invest in one. If it gets to that bad of a conditions, I will get like a white one, I think it works.
Yeah. All right, Brian. Hey, thanks so much for having me on your show. It's been a pleasure. It's good to see you. And last time I saw you, I think we were riding BART together.
Back in May. It's funny. I was heading home from St. Mary's Gales baseball, and like I said, as we were getting on to do the podcast, after the season concluded, the coach Greg Moore was unfortunately was let go. It was a big shock, and I just felt it was time. I felt when the new guy was coming in, I just felt it was just I wanted to just explore other opportunities, so I kind of just stepped away. But give us the time. So you're going to be heading out to 49ers practice today, or
not today? No. But next week, it'll be a normal work week.
Right.
Wednesday practices, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Those are the 3 big practices, and then get ready. Well, I say Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. That's if the game's on a Sunday. If the game's on a Saturday, it'll be moved up. Yeah, exactly. So, and we'll be dropping 49ers Talk podcast. Look for my Brock Purdy interview. I'm sure the entirety of it will also be put up on YouTube. So check that out. I covered some pretty good topics. I think fans will enjoy the one-on-one with Brock. He was phenomenal to talk to. So look forward to that being out there and people having the opportunity to watch and listen to that interview with Brock Purdy. So Brian, thanks again for having me on.
What time you guys come on? Just for 40 on podcast?
Well, for the podcast, it's subscribe to 49ers Talk anywhere you get your podcast. You can find
just about every day.
Yeah, you can find it. It's not done live. You can find it on YouTube as well, and then 49ers pre and post game shows on NBC Sports Bay Area starts an hour before kickoff, and then immediately after the game we do the post game wrap. So looking forward to a fun week.
Should be a good ride for the Niner Empire. Fasten your seatbelts, and the Niners are just 2 wins away from making that trip to Vegas.
All right, Brian. Take care. And
all right, you have a very nice day, and I will hopefully catch up with you right before the Super Bowl if things continue to go well. Thanks, man.
Okay, take care.
Right. Okay. All right. That's Matt Maiocco, the 49ers Insider, NBC Sports Bay Area. Check out all the podcasts on Niners Talk with Jennifer Lee Chan. You can check that out on NBC Sports Bay Area via YouTube. They are streaming. If you miss any of those podcasts, you'll have the Brock Purdy interview and so much more. For the latest news on 49ers news and so much more, go to 49ers.com. Check us out on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/@NinersRadio49. That's youtube.com/@NinersRadio49. And check us out on Facebook.com/@NinersRadio49. That's it for now. I'm Brian Professor B. Davis. Thank you for watching this Niners Radio podcast, and like to thank with my special guest, 49ers Insider Matt Maiocco from NBC Sports Bay Area. Thank you very much for watching, everybody, on Niners Radio 49, your exclusive network home of your San Francisco 49ers playoff bound update on Niners Radio 49, which is an association with Satellite Digital Media News Network. Thanks for watching, everybody, and go Niners.